All right. All right, so it's 7 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. I'm Charlie Bene, president of the East English Community Library Board of Trustees. We're here for the July 21st, 2026 board meeting. We've got 5 of our trustees here tonight. We've got our agenda in front of us. Anyone have any comments or changes on the order of the agenda? Seeing none, we'll go to public comment. We'll move on to our liaison reports. Julianne.
They're having a recruitment
Yeah, they're
event, a meeting tonight.
okay. Yeah. All right. So then for Upper Hudson board, Kenny said the board met on July 8th. Also their youth and family services manager is going to be visiting the constituent libraries. So they're going to be Upper Hudson's going to be gathering feedback on the services efforts. Also, Upper Hudson's going to organize a Friends Council for Friends of the Library groups. Yeah, they're going to kind of kick that off towards the end of the summer. And lastly, Mohawk Valley System, they're doing a whole bunch of events for the 250th anniversary of the Revolution. And Kemi provided sign up for a tour of the battlefield with the former director of Upper Hudson, Tim Burke. He's gonna be the tour guide there. So if you're interested, you can send you the link. And that was it from Kami. Thank you to Kami. And nothing from the town or the county. So we'll move into reviewing the June 23rd meeting minutes. Those are item B in the packet. Anyone have any initial kind of comments or thoughts? If not, we'll do a motion to approve the minutes of the June 23rd, 2026 library board meeting. Motion from Kayla, second from Doug. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? 5-0. Thank you. And we'll move to Crystal for the treasurer's.
First up is the off warrant, which we find in the C. This for the period of June 19th, 2026 to June 16th, 2026. The total amount was $380,168.96. Of note, there were 2 pay periods, but the significant amount was paid to Titan Roofing, which was transferred from non-restricted capital reserves to the operating fund. 310K. The off warrant.
Do a motion to accept the off warrant in the amount of $380,168.96 for the period of June 19th, 2026 through July 16th, 2026 as presented. Motion, Doug, second. Second. Discussion, comments? All in favor? 5-0. Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Warren.
Next is the warrant, which you can find in attachment B, for the same time period of June 19th through July 16th. The total amount for the warrant was $47,058.06. Nothing of note stands out. There were healthcare benefits, there's a health insurance broker, lawn care, Kind Solutions, our IT provider, and the Upper Hudson library system. Are there any questions, or does anyone like to review a line item? That's it for the warrant.
Motion to authorize the president to sign the warrant for the period of June 19th, 2026 through July 16th, 2026, the amount of $47,058.06. Motion from Amanda, second. Doug, comments, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? 5-0. So motion carries. To financials.
First up, attachment E is the budget versus actual for 2026, and this is January 1st through July 16th. We are 53.97 percent of the year over. We are under budget from the actual. Let me take that back. We're a little over budget from the actual to the budget. But I think it's just the timing of the year and what we paid out so far. So next up is, does anyone have a question on if they do, they can have it. Next up is the balance sheet, which is F. Non-restricted funds available are $2,559,683.15. Donor restricted funds available are $107,735. Not moving on to the G, which is donor restricted and grant report to the library. We have funds available are $28,870.96. And last but not least is the capital reserve funds.
Right, so we've got motion to approve the July 16, 2026 financials, so it's 53.97% of the year included as. Got a motion from Kayla, second. From Amanda, any discussion comments? Seeing none, all in favor? 5-0. Let's go. We'll do that, and we'll move to committee reports. I'll cover this one for Jordan. As you see there, we've got we've kind of three main points of discussion. I'm going to reach out to the liaisons to see if there's any restructuring of the beginning of the meeting. When we get liaison reports, if there's a better way that we want to present. We did, moving on to item 2 is the community access to shared spaces policy. We have been working on this for a couple of months in committee. Just here, we've completed the final review and we've attached as the things in the body. So that's for tonight to make to really discuss and get approval on. And then the third item before that motion is we discussed trustee recruitment with 2 positions open for 2027. And then we, it's kind of guided by the strategic plan. We look, we always want to try to evaluate composition of trustees and the recruitment efforts that are upstream of that. Through the equity lens, trying to get, a broad array of community representation, and then to match outreach to candidates who might be interested, to match that. We were talking about potentially holding a recruitment event. Kind of working through that to see what's the best way to get engagement in light of reaching people of diverse backgrounds and interests to help kind of build out a diverse range of perspective in the community on the library board. And just for calendaring, we've got the petition deadline on October 17th, with the candidates forum tentatively scheduled for October 22nd, depending on the interest we get with the petitions that are turned in. And we've got some future work to do, as you see there. So then turning back to item 2 for the motion, we've got, as I said, we've got the community access and shared spaces policy. Appreciate everyone's efforts in kind of working through this, trying to get a policy that really kind of captures the scope and breadth of a document that the public can use, that staff can use, that kind of sets expectations and is kind of flexible enough to address this kind of the broad topic that we're looking at here. So any initial kind of comments or questions on it? Seeing none, there's a motion from the committee to approve the community access and shared services and shared spaces policy. We have a second. We have a second from Crystal. Any discussion or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, 5-0. The motion carries and the policy is approved. And then turning to admin from the second half of our meeting on the 6th. We saw the action items there. Let's lay out again, we kind of worked through the status of where we are with our facilities updates, working on the roof project, ongoing work on renovating from the water damage, and awaiting the glass for the front entryway. We talked a little bit about kind of relatedly the construction grant scope update. So you see there, kind of working through the scope there. And then in there, we've got because we're looking to do in the nearest term, some work on kind of staff facilities on back of the house. We've got a motion to authorize Jill, the director, to submit a construction grant for renovation for just under $89,000 for the renovation of the employee support services. I'm circle back to that at the end. Let's go through. We also, we talked a little about the payroll company, how we're going to shift from current provider to another provider. We had a discussion, which is going to be the beginning of the discussion, which you'll see later on new business, on an update on Community Way, the prevailing wage issue there. There's topic there. We're trying to schedule a meeting with Skodak for advancing the contract there. And we didn't, with that lengthy agenda, we didn't quite get to advancing the land use policy. So that's on for the next agenda. And I'll circle back to item 2 for the approval for the construction grant for the employee support services. So there's a motion from the committee for the administrative to authorize the director to submit a construction grant application in the amount of $88,600 for the renovation of an employee support space. So we've got a motion from the committee, second from Amanda. Any discussion or comment? All in favor? All right, motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everybody. Shifting on from nothing for unfinished business. So you can instead of hearing me go on, you can now hear me stuff about the library from Jill.
June was a busy month, but in many ways marked even busiest time of year, summer reading. So we kicked off our summer reading event for all of our programming for the summer. We have opening day. We signed up just shy of 163 children and teens and another 86 adults. Day 1. Since then we've logged, at the time that I wrote this update, more than 5,200 books, but now it's closer to, it's more than 9,000 books to our 12,500 book challenge. So we are well on our way to meet that goal. It's been great to see so much enthusiasm and people reading. I'm excited to attend programming at the library. We've also continued building just nurturing our community partnerships. We launched a new sustainability series with the Cornell Cooperative Extension. Some of the outreach events that we attended, we went to the New York State Museum, Skodak Farmers Market. We welcomed a bunch of kindergarten classes to the library, and we trained 92 teen volunteers to volunteer this summer. And the response was so strong this year that we scheduled another. We had to add an extra training session. So overall, library use continues to be very strong. Building visits, website traffic, Wi-Fi, new library cards, and active borrowers all up over June, which is encouraging to see. We are still seeing a drop in physical circulation. That is, I've been looking sort of nationally at what's happening and with Upper Hudson, and we're in line with that. But one of the challenges that we're continuing to see is just delays from publishers as well. And I don't know if that can also be having an impact. It is having an impact on what we have out floor available at the library. New books just, they're simply not arriving as fast as they used to arrive, and that is since Baker and Taylor went bankrupt and closed down suddenly, and they were the largest book distributor for libraries in the country. And so while we were set up with other vendors, everybody else is feeling that crunch. And so what we've been doing is, to help sort of address there's longer wait times for things because they're coming in later than typical. And so we've been working with several new vendors, trying to diversify where we're ordering, see if that might help. And it's, a little bit more work on our end right now, but overall, in the end, it should give us a little bit more flexibility and provide better service by diversifying the number of vendors that we work with to source our materials. So we're working on that right now. And it's tricky because there's a lot of processing that happens offsite through these vendors so that things come ready to be with the least amount of staff intervention. There's still staff intervention that needs to happen here, adding things to the catalog and some minor processing, but we try to have the vast majority of things done before they arrive here so that we can really prioritize our personnel costs based on things that are as much as possible interacting with community members and as little, sort of, if you can outsource it and not pay personnel to do things that are routine work, then that's what we've been doing, and we've been doing that for a long time. But it's when you set up new vendors, it's a long process to set up each new vendor to have that happen. So we're working through that, and I'm happy about that, but it is sort of
Joe, when you talk about delays,
yeah,
in my head, that means a book might be available at Barnes and Noble,
correct.
but then it could be weeks later.
Yes,
You
or
get it.
absolutely.
Interesting.
You have to slap a
Never considered
barcode
that.
on it, you have to slap plastic on it, you have to slap the.
Yeah, it's all the processing. So we've done other things where certain titles and just think we can't wait that long. So then you're going direct to, Barnes and Noble or an Amazon or a place like that, and you're getting things right away. But then that's a lot more work on our end to get those materials ready to go out. So you have to kind of balance that with capacity, really, because that's a completely different staffing model than we've had in the past. So I've just been trying to really figure out why are the numbers dropping for our physical circulation. And I mean, it is happening nationally, so it still surprises me with where that is, because our other numbers are going up. I mean, active library card holders are going up. Folks who are actually using the library, new people who are signing up for cards, that's going up. People through the door, that's going up. So why are people borrowing less items? Yeah, the problem is that makes sense. I mean, that's kind of what we always thought. We always thought, okay, digital's going up and physical item is going down. But it's kind of the overall is staying relatively even. Add them together, but they're not. So digital is sort of plateaued, but physical is still dropping. So it's really interesting. Now, maybe people are checking out less items and they're just only borrowing what they're reading. I don't know. But we're looking at everything. We're continuing to evaluate all the different reasons why it could be. So that's one thing. You may notice that with the hot off the press. Typically, we have a lot more things available. See that it's looking kind of empty because as soon as those things go, as soon as they come, they're out the door because they're just not arriving very fast. And that is making us, really rethink that collection even. That's something that is really worth doing at this point in time. So we're looking at everything, and we'll evaluate more once some reading is over, because basically a lot of planning stops during summer reading for our frontline staff. All hands on deck for just operational. So programming and such. What else? On the operations side, we're managing several staffing transitions. It's just kind of a mix of just normal turnover. We've got a retirement, we've got a few leaves of absence, and they just happen to all be happening at once. And so recruitment is underway. We've already filled several positions, we're continuing to recruit. We're also continuing our transition to new payroll system and wrapping up the final reporting for the Upper Hudson Equity Challenge Grant, because that's over December 31st. So we're getting all our ducks in a row to send off our final reports for that. Facilities projects are continuing to move forward. Titan has been here this week to schedule to work yesterday, not today, it's the rain, but they were working on the remaining trim and the installing the roof ladder. That should bring that project substantially to a close, but we still have a couple of other items that we haven't identified yet. With the snow guards, they'll come back for the snow guard, and also the so we have a heat trace system up there now for snow. They're replacing that, so we're still working through pricing on that. It's a component of the contract. Yeah. One thing that I wanted to make you aware of, if you've been in the library, you noticed it with the carpet installation, we're seeing some conditions that potentially could be related to a moisture issue. And we're working with the contractor, we're working with the project manager for the carpet install, as well as the carpet company to figure that out. And then we brought in our project manager from Weed Chef as well, so we can just kind of have it all eyes from different perspectives, trying to figure out the source of this, whether it's it really, we don't know. It's too early at this point to know if it falls within the contractor's responsibility. It's something that has to do with the installation, preparation, or whether it reflects a larger issue that is, outside of the scope of the carpet project, which is a much larger issue for us that we hope is not the issue. So, will we need remediation with the water table? I mean, there is a very high water table here. Very high water table. There's the ground is clay. So we'll continue working through the investigation and not get updated as people are informed. It's actively happening. We're also beginning the next phase of planning for the public restroom renovation. That is, as you know, being largely funded through the $250,000 SAM grant that Assemblymember McDonald's office generously helped us receive. And so we're started work with that. We're also continuing to develop the plans for the proposed staff bathrooms and place space renovations should that grant funding become available. We had an incident this month that really sort of reinforced that we need these bathrooms done. Why the improvements are really important, a lot of the ADA improvements. EMS responded to assist the patron who was unable to lift themselves off of the facility of one of the restroom toilets without help. And they told us that it had to do with the height of the toilet versus compared to the bar. So it's a really good reminder that accessibility is really important. We had to call EMS to come in and help, and it was, it's for folks. And so it's really important that ADA standards, they are met. They really directly impact people's ability to use the library and their experience here. And while I was ironically meeting with the architect talking about this project in the very moment that happened, that did not make that experience better for that individual. Great, you're planning it, it's not happening, it's not done. So we're working on it, but that was an unfortunate experience. And then finally, later tonight, I'll be asking you guys to discuss the proposed relocation of the Star of Hope Memorial, moving it to Columbia High School. And that was proposed last week, and we can talk more about that, what that would look like later, and what the request has been from Rotary Club and school district to move that memorial. Overall, June was a great month, and so far, summer reading has been a lot of fun.
Joseph, with that, the personnel reports.
Hires. Any questions about me?
A motion to approve the July 1st, 2026 personnel memo as presented. Crystal, second, make second, discussion comments. Seeing none, all in favor? Zero. We'll move on to new business. So the first thing to come off, we've got in the, you see it in the pack about in services, we talked a little bit about trustee recruitment, potentially doing a recruitment event on September 15th before the board meeting. Just to give folks an opportunity to kind of learn about what the board's being on the board would be like. And then also, use it as an opportunity to also discuss kind of other relevant volunteer opportunities in the library.
Sure, I got some feedback from Julianne with the Friends of the Library. They are right now holding their membership recruitment meeting to plan how they are, looking for new members. So they're talking about the same thing at the same time, which is great. And they are open to collaborating in any way, shape, or form. That particular evening is not going to work for them based on what they have on their agenda. So they said we could either move forward without them or we could join together at an alternative date and time. So I think we'll just have to figure that out as a board, and we need to make that decision tonight, because if we want to use this as a recruitment for the current year, we need to be planning that this summer, because trustee October 17th.
It's my concern is so it only gives that the first people that come to that only a month to get their packet in order, and that's not a lot of time to, it's only 25 signatures, but you only given that person a month to get 25 signatures and come back. Like, I feel like there's not a lot of time. And like, yeah, we would obviously be like, yeah, 5 to 7 signatures right there, we'd be happy to sign a packet.
But I think it would be
But-
people that maybe already have their packet and just want like more exposure or learn more about it. I like the idea of a joint, just because I feel like maybe there's people that are learning about it, that maybe would be better suited for the friends. Interested in friends that might need.
But if the friends aren't available on the 15th, I feel like earlier would be better. Like if the friends can do earlier, I think a joint meeting would be better. A joint recruitment event better.
Mm-hmm. So when we think about that, would you like to do something in summer? If you get too close to the beginning of the school year, that wipes out teachers and parents.
I don't feel like we'll get a lot of people in the summer. Like, I feel like September was good, maybe.
Good time.
I feel like the 15th is. That's 4 weeks.
I don't know, maybe we could do it. I'm open to whatever, I think it's all you. It's
all you.
It's really,
I just think it's a good idea. I mean, people can find out more about it.
And joining would be great,
Would be great.
I think
but if it can't happen,
beneficial.
right,
maybe that's a year out.
yeah, and it doesn't mean we couldn't do it later on in the year. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be at a time where you get the packet to learn about it. I mean, we have people who come who have been interested for a long time. And especially if we're doing it joint, join the friends any time of year. Right.
It just would stay away from August 26th. Because that's 6th grade and freshman new student orientation. Relevant to my interest.
So I think we could either look at I guess the options that I'm hearing are the August. We already have set aside time on our calendar for the August 18th tentative board meeting, so we could just, number one, we need to decide if we need the board meeting. Number two, we could use that time for an event. We could also look at, we could also just keep it that September time and then do it without the friends at this time, or we could move it to, I'm hearing next week, and do it with the friends. We don't want it to be too close to the end of recruitment time, but we don't want it to be so early in September. So that's it is a tricky time of year to be recruiting. Nothing's gonna be perfect, so
Do you know if they're open to the 18th?
I don't know if they're open to the 18th. I can certainly find out.
Probably the best bet other
Yeah.
than the 15th, just because it's already.
Really need to decide tonight though,
I think we need to decide,
for the 18th.
and perhaps we could say if we wanna do it jointly, we'll do it the 18th, if they're willing and able. And then,
If not, we should go into the.
do you think this September?
Yeah.
The only, we already discussed this before, is that would mean I leave the friends meeting a little early to come here, and it is because they only meet so often. That's a bigger meeting for them. Which is fine. I think I can do that. And then we'll push the board meeting, we'll start at 7:30 instead of 7 to allow us to do this. Okay, so does that work? So I can get back to you guys via Teams and we can talk about which date is settled. And then we can put it out to the community once we decide what date is settled. After I talk to Julian, and she's talking to friends tonight too, gathering their feedback, so that'll help.
Would we still do the August if there was no need for a board?
Yeah. If the friends are willing to do it, yes. Yeah, sure, it could be a standalone, it doesn't have to be tied. Although that was one of the things that you guys talked about was the benefit of tying it to a board meeting. I think Jordan was talking about how one of the things that encouraged her was when she came to a board meeting and saw but nothing says we couldn't invite people to just come to the next board meeting too, even if we don't have a board
And you
meeting.
try something this year
Yeah,
and then
it works.
with work. And then-
Okay, great.
Let's start. Hopeful.
So does anybody know about the Star of Hope Memorial?
I was just going to say, doesn't make me a bad person if I didn't.
Okay, the
Here,
Star, sadly,
Back there.
sadly,
It
because
sits
it's a really an important thing. It memorializes high school students who have passed before they graduated high school. And this was put in place, a long time, since the beginning, not sure, it's been at least 20 years that it's been here. It is located right at the, where the YMCA and the libraries probably join our end of our parking lot. And there is a bench there, and there is a stone, a memorial stone, and there's, some bricks with folks' names on them. And it is potentially a really special place. And it has gone like this up and down over the years with how well it's been maintained. It has been maintained by, so history, it was put from what I gather, researching and talking to folks. It was put together, it was a project that was initiated by Rotary Club. The superintendent at the time, Terry Brewer, was a member of Rotary Club. And so it was kind of all through, you know, it was all very closely intermingled with the high school and Rotary. And his daughter was on the Interact Club, which is the high school version of Rotary Club, and she was president there. So they had this great service idea, was that this would be maintained by Rotary and the Interact Club, and it has gone like this with how well it's been able to be maintained based on volunteers and just how hard it has been for them over the years to get volunteers. So back in 2018, that was the last time that we had a big revitalization, and that was the Rotary Club got some volunteers together, and as this was sort of the last big push to really make it really special back then, was some plantings and different things. And it's just become so overgrown and like embarrassingly maintained. So anyways, it feels like an afterthought over there, and it deserves more.
It definitely.
So the request was Rotary asked the school and asked us if we would consider moving it over to the school. Well, they asked us first and then they asked the school, and the school is very interested in taking it over. They are doing work right now with all their renovations, and they have a contractor who is willing to donate their time and their materials to move everything. And then they would reseed, you know, so it's just grass there. It seems like a wonderful opportunity to make the space special, to move it. But I want to, of course, need to bring it to the board, and it, you know, when this first came up, we hadn't really talked about our space very much, and now we spend a lot of time talking about it, our land and our space, and I want to be sensitive to how important you said it was to get feedback from the community. And you know, the weird part is you've got a contractor who's willing to do it now. That may or may not last. It's not guaranteed. They said they would do it now.
I mean, it makes more
When
sense.
when would they come to do it?
In August, they said they would be.
Seems like a very thoughtful thing, because I feel like there's students there.
Take care of it
Maintain it.
better than they.
You know, it could be part of whatever club they
Yeah.
put it into, and I feel like it would be
Like
very
it's better.
special there, as opposed to like an afterthought here.
Yes.
You know, and
Yeah.
like,
Cause even as a student at club,
No.
no,
Yeah, people really are, I mean, I'm sure that
Well, it's
I would
even at the
hope
end
that
of
the
the
families
property,
maybe
you
are
know.
coming, but
well, and
I
then was a
don't
girl
know.
when I was a freshman. See, or
Okay.
she was.
Nobody here has any
So-
attachment to that. It's
No.
memorial.
it's even at the
I
end
did-
of the property, you know.
Yeah, it's
it
not
needs
like it's
a
right
more
next to the door,
prominent
it's right at the end of the.
Yeah, I think when it was put in, we didn't really know probably how the space was gonna be used.
That's for on both.
Oh, really?
It is a Pokestop and a Poke Gym.
Oh.
I'm not even joking. I will show you on the map.
Oh.
It's-
Well, that's
So,
so,
yeah, so I
that's
would
not the
say that-
intention of that space.
No, that's not what it's for, but that's
Yes.
what it is. That's the only use that it has.
I'm all for this.
To the library.
I think that's
It
wonderful
makes
that he's
sense.
donated his time for that.
I think that it's literally the best thing we can do for the space. But is it going to cause disruptions, like? I mean, is it like that, a lot of people use that cut, like, we're gonna have to let people know, because a lot of people use that cut through to get to the YMCA, like.
Yeah, I don't know yet.
It's
I
gonna
mean,
cause some disruption.
there will be some logistics involved, all manageable.
Okay.
I was gonna say, it doesn't seem like it's gonna be.
Yeah.
Just what happened for landscape.
Is it gonna, like,
Well,
It's just, is that covered in the mowing we have now, or we have to add?
it's covered in the mowing. That's the only thing we do over there is mow right now. So
Okay.
mowing would be covered and that would be fine. It'd probably be easier for them to mow.
Yeah.
to right.
Yeah.
I don't think they would be upset by that at all. It may be tricky to establish the grass. You know, because
always
there's not
tricky to
really
establish
water over
grass.
there to be able to water it.
weeds,
But
weeds are green now.
weeds are green, you know,
I have one.
Yeah, right, like they're green, you can't tell from a distance.
it can't be worse than a memorial that's not taken care of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems
No, I
like a
mean-
no-brainer, but I can't think of any reason not to do it.
The schools didn't have any
Anybody
concern, they were on for it, oh, I think this
Yeah,
is a
then,
wonderful idea. Honestly, knowing now knowing the history, and I think it does make sense, I think. It does, like. I don't know, I just knew this, the bench said Rotary on the back.
Yeah.
It just, that's all it says, and, I mean, I played Pokemon Go, so, yeah. And the inscription is a Martin Luther King Jr. quote. That's all I knew about it, I thought that was neat, but, and I knew those paving stones, but I thought they were related to the ones up here. That's all I knew about it, I just thought it was a continuation of those paving stones.
I didn't even know.
There's nothing that explains anything else about it whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like, there's not like a,
Plaque or-
no plaque, nothing, nothing that says it's sponsored by the Rotary Club other than the bench. Like, to me, this makes absolutely no sense to keep it here.
Yeah.
And, I mean, yes, maybe we could get in the community, but we are also community members, we don't have any connection to this other than if we were Columbia High School students, which we're not. But you were, and you didn't even know about this. Like, you didn't, and you went to Columbia High School, you graduated from Columbia High School, you didn't even know about this thing here.
I think there was a bench back there.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Yeah, I think it would be different if it was as,
I don't go to the Y,
you
so I don't
know,
know.
actively maintained and used
Yeah,
by.
like, I mean,
you know,
I sit
people.
on that bench when I walk around here, I do use the bench, I think it's a great bench, I think it's a wonderful bench. I don't maintain the bench.
So you don't need a motion to do that, right? Like you're just asking.
You just need like a.
Do we need a motion?
I think we, I mean,
I mean, I'm
I don't
not
know.
gonna make the motion to pass,
not?
to prevent, to give the bench
Well, it can't
and.
hurt to have a record.
a record.
Yeah.
I'm happy to
Decision.
make this motion to give the bench and the stuff to the Columbia High School. Or to the East River School District, I have no problem with this.
Happy to go to the board,
So
makes a motion to relocate the Star Memorial to Columbia High School. In partnership with
I think
the
that
Rotary
makes-
Club and the school district. And then the school district will receive the loan for us and which is a very generous way to do that. In the future, if we feel like we need a bench over there, we can deal with that. Which in
I
the
do
future,
think-
that's not their
I do
responsibility.
think that is a good idea, I do think having some sort of seating out there, but that is a land use thing that we could look to do in the future.
Figure out how
Yeah.
spaces.
Like a sponsor, like maybe a sponsored bench or something, like some sort of seating. But that's a land use like thing that like we've been working on in admin committee, I think
Okay.
that could be a use that we could do later on, but that's just because I walk over there and I'm like, you know what, seating is kind of nice, like having a metal bench is kind of nice. When I walk, I also sit at the pavilion at the Y, I think that's a fantastic seating. And there's also seating at the Eddy. I don't sit there, but that's because it's private. I guess the Y is also, but I feel like the Y is a little different. Sorry, YMCA, if you're listening. But I'm also a Y member, so I guess.
So do we need to
Yeah,
I mean, I made the motion,
Yeah, yeah.
so I guess we need to say.
Yeah, I'll second.
any discussion, comments? Anybody? Here, motion approved, thank you. Thank you to the school district and its for. All right, so the last thing on new business is, again, we kind of talked about it a little bit, in admin. We discussed, we've been talking about, to bring folks up to speed, we've been talking about options for, work on the roadway on Community Way. So what we did was we got, because it's owned trilaterally between us, the Y and the A, we were trying to figure out the logistics behind procurement of services for repairs. So what Jill did is just talk to the attorney we have on retainer to look at some of the kind of the municipal law issues behind the complexity of having a project on an item that's split multilaterally. And I think what Walton Shores, they came back with some kind of interesting research to indicate that not only for this, for kind of broader, right, like it's really just that
Yeah, I mean,
because of our, I think Jill talked about this a little bit, right, like we talked about this as a common theme of libraries don't neatly fit in because of the way they're structured differently in New York State. They don't neatly fit into other kind of public procurement requirements the way like other agencies do. So the prevailing wage requirements, I think they really concluded they don't really apply to us.
yeah, it's very interesting and kind of surprising research, to be honest, because the research that they were showing from different court cases, and the research into the way that the laws are written. So in terms of the labor law and procurement law, election law, libraries are typically not mentioned. And so libraries are mentioned in library specific laws, but beyond that, they're not mentioned. And so there have been some cases that have, some public libraries, here's one case, chartered by the Board of Regents, have a defined corporate existence as education corporations. And then it talks about so in this case, it was that the library at issue was not a public agency within the meaning of library law. Of labor law, so that was interesting. They talked about that statute does not expressly apply to educational corporations, and that library is special district library governed by the board. And so library is defined in New York education law as a district public library. And because of our charter and its defined corporate existence as an education corporation, it really, some of the sort of legal procurement that we've been following as general best practice, they're saying is maybe not necessarily consistent with what we need to be doing. So that talks about, there was competitive bidding requirements of general municipal law. Or found, this is a different court case, that the library was not political subdivision. The library at issue undoubtedly performs a public function and is closely intertwined with the school district it serves, but not itself a municipal corporation, school district, district corporation, or board of cooperative educational services, which are all entities that are considered to be political subdivisions for the state for purposes of public contracts. So their conclusion was that there are some sort of meritorious things that would allow us to not move forward with not use prevailing wage for this project. which by doing that would allow us to structure a contract with the other entities that do not use prevailing wage. And we were trying to figure out how do we structure our contract. I mean, we were trying to figure out how to get away from paying prevailing wages. How do you structure a contract with three entities that own that own the road in different locations? And so that's very tricky too, because
We will not be able to check that item after. Thank you.
you can't use public funds to pay for it, you know, in the true strict way that if you were calling us, you know, a political entity or one of these other corporations for purchasing, it's very tricky because you've got the road is owned. We don't split the whole thing 3 ways. We each own a portion with a right of way. It's considered a driveway, not a road. So now that the road is off the table, we need to bring it. It needs to be brought down to its base. We need to repair it, and sort of redo it. But how do we do that? And
Well, you can't just do one portion.
you can't just do
Like,
one.
see ya.
You can't just do
You
one
do
portion.
it.
You need to do the whole thing. And also, if you structure a contract, with the way we've always done it is we've done a third, like from the beginning. That's the MOU from the beginning of everything being built was we split everything a third. But we haven't had anything of this large scope to really be concerned about how do we structure large contracts. And so you can't get funding. You can't, if we only own from here to here, we can't pay the entire thing. I mean, we can't pay a third, we can only pay from here to here. However, everybody drives over the beginning part, which is what the library owns, so there's more wear and tear on that part, so that therefore that would be less. It's not really beneficial to our taxpayers if we're not splitting it a third. We may end up paying more because everybody has to pass through and there's more wear and tear on that portion. And so it's very, very tricky. And so I guess the question before the board is, I mean, there's nothing that has, our attorneys found that there was nothing prohibiting us from not using prevailing wage and continuing to go a third the way that we have been going. It is not clear case law. I mean, there's nothing in the law that clearly says this is how libraries should do things. And so it's not black and white. I think it's a judgment call. It's a very gray area. And so I think in terms of what will be the lowest cost for our taxpayers, it would be to continue to structure a third. You know, in general, if we were to use public funds in terms of grant money from the state, then we would have to, no matter what, pay prevailing wage.
Just because that's part of the contract.
That's part of
the grant
it.
itself.
And while it does not expressly say, or they're not expressly saying that we need to follow competitive bid purchasing, we already have our purchasing policy, which is competitive bid. I mean, I would never recommend that we don't follow competitive bid protocols because it's just good practice. You want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to bid. You want to make sure that we are getting the best price. So really it's kind of up to the board how we want to handle this because that's what they came back with, their recommendation. And I think I had emailed this around back in June. So now we need to decide which route we want to go. And move forward to repairing this at a much reduced rate.
Yeah, I think for me, I think the competitive bidding is sort of lighter decision to make because we already have the existing policy. So even though we don't need to necessarily, we had known when we made the policy that we wouldn't have needed to use the competitive bidding law as the model for our policy. I don't see a need to change it because then we have the policy to kind of cover it. Like you said, it works, and then I think it helps with just operationally, if you're using a similar model that other entities that are subject to the competitive bidding law have to follow, you're gonna get those bidders that are accustomed to using the competitive bidding structure, public competitive bidding structure when they bid on our project. So then deviating from that, even though we technically have the authority to, might not work out in the long run in terms of returns on when we go out to bid for projects. And then I think on prevailing wage, right, I think it's a little bit different because it's not necessarily like the policy that we have ingrained, that we've adopted and would be deviating from. This is more of, it's more case specific when we have projects like this. And then on top of it, like you said earlier, when you don't have something like the grant, which I think is a big chunk of the revenue in for our construction, for our capital, for constructions, you're already gonna have prevailing wage from that. So the universe of instances where we'd otherwise like consider doing prevailing wage, I think is relatively small. So in a way, it's like, I think it's helpful because for the two issues together, competitive bidding, you already have the existing policy, which to me seems like we keep it static because of the nature of it. And then for prevailing wage, because it's I think a more limited universe, we can, like with this, we can deviate. And then also I think this is talking about mitigating, this is sort of a complex version of the discussion where, because it's new information, but it's also a kind of the complex arrangement we've got in terms of ownership, like multiple parties involved with an item like the driveway, as opposed to just where it's just us. So it's sort of a stress test on the idea as we kind of live a plane where we fly it a little bit, but I think it makes sense to follow this guidance for this, because like you said, when there's public money involved, I think the balance of the equity is ways to me to not use prevailing wage because you've got other parties involved too. Kind of jointly operate a little bit.
But what's the worst that happens? We end up setting new case law because somebody takes issue with our approach.
That's true. I mean, it's true.
I mean, those are legal funds.
Right.
So that you're at risk of legal funds. But probably safe be paying what, I don't know, we would save significant funds.
Pursue
My
legal
goal
advice. Legal advice says prevailing wage, not a thing for you to worry
I
about.
mean, that's what they said.
Okay,
So-
follow our advice.
It's due diligence. but-
Yeah.
Yep. So we're acting on our own, trying to be.
Right, we-
Decision on our own.
Certainly we're trying to favor people, it's just,
No.
frees up money for other things.
In other construction projects,
Yes.
have we used prevailing wage?
Yes. So, but I will say that we're getting New York State funding for those projects.
Have to.
So we have to, no matter what.
So the trend on your question, I think, or finally home it is, are there instances you can think of where it's not New York State funding, that's an independent requirement of prevailing wage, where we've done it kind of voluntarily, or because we've acted on the presumption in the past that we should pay prevailing wage?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, we do it.
Not very often, but we do. We do it for, like heat pumps and
But
if
we
it's
do
something
partner.
breaks or.
Heat pump nowadays, I don't get it.
Right.
I mean, if we don't do,
Exactly, I don't think anyone's gonna blame us if it's
save some.
And then
nowadays,
now
it saves some money.
I guess, is there anything you can think of where it would have a impact on like there's no existing bids that would have been subject to prevailing wage structure, and then if we decide tonight, we say, okay, as use today as an example, or August 1st for cleanness. You say prior to August 1st, it was prevailing wage, post August 1st, it's not. Is there anything that's complicated based on that timeline?
Everything. if we go with anything that has state funding, we have to follow.
Yeah, and everything that we've been doing so far is New York
Not
State grid.
state funded, not prevailing wage.
Who would take issue with this? Are there groups? I honestly have
people
no
not getting
idea.
the job.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a labor union perhaps.
The people not getting the job,
Perhaps.
that would probably be the only person that would.
And the tricky part is, if this job were bid out, and how do you structure a contract and that say, I'm gonna pay you? It reduces the number of people who want the contract, even if you could split it up. Because you have a portion of the project that's prevailing wage and then 2/3 that's not prevailing wage. And so
Right,
you're gonna hire people, and for these 3 days of work, you're gonna get this rate. For these days of work, you're gonna get this rate.
Yeah.
It's gonna make it tricky, and the contractors don't necessarily wanna.
And I think the other side.
But I don't know, I'm not a contractor.
The other side on the balance of that is, who's your responsibility as a taxpayer, where are we paying too much? Are we paying more than we otherwise would kind of be strictly required to? And also, is there a feasibility of structuring a multilateral work agreement? Like you said earlier, it's kind of, I think, difficult to bind two other counterparties who have a shared interest in the surface with us, to then kind of either require them, foist it on them, however you want to phrase it, to convert, to say, okay, we're paying prevailing wage, and it's not easy, it's at a minimum not easy, or just not feasible to structure an agreement, a three-way agreement to do the construction on the roadway. With us doing prevailing wage, while they don't do it, they're otherwise not required to. So I think that's the sort of narrows we have to navigate through, because it's like, can we do it with our partners? Is it feasible to try to do it? Do we want to? And then balancing their side of, we cooperate with labor where we otherwise can. But I think in this specific case, and then it also doesn't, I don't necessarily think it precludes us in the future, because the only real project in front of us now is the roadway, in light of this analysis and thinking and conversation. Could always change in the future, based on the project that's otherwise, like, we get a project in 3 years that's not otherwise grant funded. And we're kind of back in the similar situation, we could always reevaluate, like there's no policy that binds us to saying forever until we change a policy or we have further discussion or do X, Y, and Z steps, that we're, bound to this level of thinking.
Question for me, this will preclude us from getting any state grant funding.
We already can't.
already.
I already tried to figure out how to do that, and because
That's in the
we
split
can't
nature.
because of how it's split, because we don't have full
the fact that it's
ownership of the property.
This will be straight
Yeah, and
general budget
I just,
expenditure.
yeah,
No, we definitely want to know what's.
Yeah.
I mean, because that was the first thing, was that we get funding for that, state funding, we get
Yeah, we tried.
library construction grant funding or even DOT funding. It's not eligible for DOT funding because it's not, it's a driveway. And construction grant, we don't have full ownership of the entire portion. So we could, we can't get funding, right?
Yeah, no, and I think, look, we've had on the labor side, we've had a long-standing commitment to using prevailing wage where we otherwise had to in the situation. We otherwise, like you said, we normally do, again, in my view, I'll say it, the majority of the time we do this type of work, we're doing construction grants, we already have us doing prevailing wage, right? And where I think you could say that you can kind of reverse engineer into it to say, like, we often go after construction grants, and prevailing wage is a part of construction grants, so in that way, we don't necessarily, I don't think we've taken issue in the past, we've never taken issue in the past, we've done construction grants that have prevailing wage as part of it, say, oh, we don't want to do construction grants because of prevailing wage, we've always done it and combined with that as the nature of that
Right.
construction grant. So it's just, I think it's the complexity of the issue now with the roadway and multilateral ownership.
Yes.
Make it hard, I think, I'm gonna say not really feasible to do prevailing wage with two other parties that can't comply with it and don't have any other requirements to comply with prevailing wage. And the complexity of trying to parse out how to do it. We wanted to do prevailing wage, we otherwise, otherwise felt inclined to do it, we can't with two other parties that are, it's such a complicated issue. It's like, it's not a,
That would come up, it would come up again if we were doing repairing or replacing the lighting for community room as well, any major work that we do. Structure. We structure our contract, and it seems so simple at first. Just a third, but you can't, that's not how you do it, how you do it.
Got the advice.
So.
Haven't heard anybody give reasons not to accept the advice and follow.
things are discussed. Alright, so I think, I don't know if there's a specific motion, I don't think there's really a motion here for the discussion for the.
Yeah, because we still have to go back, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess the next steps are, we have to go back to the other two parties. Because we still have to update the MOU. From the original, when everything was built. To have newer language. And when the MOU was put in place, it was when the building was first built. And the property was sourced by the library and the YMCA. And so the library and the YMCA built Community Way. And then Eddie came on later and they didn't have to pay to build Community Way because it was already built. But they had to bring it further onto their property when we jointly sold them that property. So we have to go back to them and update the MOU language. And this is an important issue to solve before we can do that. And so then we'll have to run it by all the parties legally. That'll be the next steps. And the other two entities are looking at hoping to potentially schedule it for the spring of 27. That would be the ideal time to do it because it really is in rough shape. But it all depends on budgets and everybody's trying to put it in their budget. So we all work on different budget cycles. So that's kind of where we are right now, tentatively, but there's a lot of moving parts that are not just us. This will help it be us move forward and, now we can sort of put it in our capital plan budget and know what we're looking at. Because we already have pricing. We already have pricing for this, so we will be. Which will be good.
Anything else for folks? That's the last thing for new business. I appreciate all the discussion. Some really interesting topics tonight. Oh, and then we've got to figure, Jill, we're gonna do the.
Yeah, so I guess the question is, are you guys good doing committee meetings Monday, August 3rd? Would you like to do that? Or do we want to do the August board meeting? We haven't always done an August board meeting. I'd like to either do committee meetings August 3rd or August 18th. Or we don't need to do committee meetings and the board meeting, but I would really like to have a scheduled August meeting. Just don't like taking so much time off. Something comes up to be able to meet. We could move the committee meetings to the 18th, which would give us more time to work on committee stuff
Yeah.
in between.
Yeah, let's do that.
Alright, so we'll move.
But the only caveat for that is
The trustee event.
if we're doing the
Yeah.
trustee event,
Right.
Let's have
And that's
something
time.
on the book. 18th regardless.
Well, do we need both committee meetings? We condense it to maybe one or the other.
Yeah, we could
And
look
then
at-
if that's the case.
what the agenda, which one needs faster work, because I don't know. there's a few things with the capital stuff that you may or may not have information in time. And in that case, I want admin. I mean, services,
I think.
we can keep on moving, but it's not time sensitive. But we may not have the admin stuff ready for the August 3rd meeting, but it's not guaranteed that it's gonna be ready for the August 18th meeting either.
So we can still work on the land use.
Oh, there's so much to do. I mean, there's plenty of things on our agenda that are not like time bound that we can continue working on, which will be good. So how about my suggestion, yes, if that's okay, would be that we first ask Julianne if the Friends are able to do this recruitment event on August 18th. And if so, then we keep our committee meetings on August 3rd. We keep our board meeting. If that date doesn't work for them, then we move our committee meetings to August 18th. I think that gives us more time to work on things. Don't necessarily think we need a board meeting, but if for some reason something comes up in between, you can change it to a board meeting instead of a committee meeting. If there's something that, you know, the board needs to vote on. I think at this point, it's gonna be committee work, but I like having that date. I prefer the August 18th date for the board to get together. The alternative would be, we say now we're not having committee meetings August 3rd, and we potentially do a committee meeting and the recruitment event on August 18th. That's another alternative. And we just decide when we get closer which committee meeting is happening that time. Or the board meeting if needed.
I don't know about that.
Why don't we do that?
Let's do that.
Let's do that. Take August 3rd off the table.
Oh, 3rd.
So that's a gift to everybody.
Thank you.
No August committee meetings. Well, no August 3rd meetings. We will have either committee meetings or a board meeting on, no matter what, on August 18th. We will,
Somebody will be meeting on August.
somebody will be meeting, and we potentially will have a recruitment event that night as well. And we'll put that out to the public as soon as we know. Friends, you know, we'll let people know.
Yeah, because this way, it'll either be August.
It's already in the
18th
calendar.
or the September date for trust.
Yeah, it's already in the calendar right now as a board meeting. We'll keep it in there as a board meeting. That potentially we get the most public attendance anyway, so we'll keep it in there as a board meeting till we are confirmed, potentially with anything.
Cause I just feel like September is trending too late, but this way it gives us an option to push it back to September instead of September, and then, oh shit, we have nothing. You know what I mean? That's,
Yeah,
like, this gives us 2 bites at the apple instead of just 1.
I think that's good. Just an FYI for anybody who's coming, we will also have community advisory council meeting that same week, 2 days later, which that's fine. A little bit of overlap between. And don't forget, we have a budget committee meeting, Monday, August. Yes.
Bristol minute, right?
All right, anything else? Alright, so at 8:15, we'll do a motion to adjourn the July 21st, 2026 library board meeting. Kayla, second, Crystal, all in favor, 5-0, motion carries. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See you.